The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest building in the known universe. It sat on a world called Nexus Prime, a planet built only for politics and power. The chamber itself could hold 10,000 beings from across the stars. Its walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of those inside. Today, the crystals glowed a soft blue, calm and cold. Ambassador Elena Cross walked through the great doors with her head held high. She was a small woman by human standards, with dark hair tied back in a simple knot and eyes that missed nothing. Behind her walked her deputy, a tall man named David Torres with broad shoulders and a face that rarely showed emotion. 2 younger diplomats followed, both nervous, but trying not to show it. For 12 years, Cross had been Earth's voice in this chamber. She knew every species here. She knew their languages, their customs, their secrets. She also knew how they looked at humans when they thought no one was watching, like they were looking at children playing at adult games. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 90 years ago. In cosmic terms, this was nothing. Some species here had been members for thousands of years. They had watched stars die and be born again. To them, humans were newcomers. Babies taking their first steps into a universe they did not fully understand. But humans understood more than they knew. The session began with small matters, trade disputes between minor worlds, a border argument that had lasted 2 centuries. The usual business of a galaxy that had forgotten how to change. Cross waited patiently, her hands folded in her lap, her expression pleasant and empty. Finally, the High Arbiter spoke her name. He was a being made of living crystal that sang when it moved, his body beautiful in a cold way, like a sculpture of frozen light. His voice rang through the chamber like breaking glass. The human delegation wishes to present a proposal, he announced. Ambassador Cross, you may speak. Cross stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Every eye, every sensor, every form of perception in the room turned to her. She felt their attention like weight on her shoulders. Thank you, High Arbiter, she said, her voice calm and clear. The United Earth government requests expanded terraforming rights in the Orion Reach. The systems in question are uninhabited. They hold no resources claimed by any council member. We wish only to create new homes for our growing population. It was a simple request. Reasonable. The Orion Reach was empty space that no one wanted. Cross had spent 3 years building support for this proposal, calling in favors, making deals, doing everything the council expected. She already knew the answer. The High Arbiter's crystal body flickered with patterns that meant amusement. The council has reviewed humanity's request, he said. It is denied. Cross did not react. She had expected this. Furthermore, the High Arbiter continued, the council finds humanity's repeated requests for expansion tiresome. Your species has been given more than enough space. Perhaps you should learn to manage what you have before asking for more. The words were insulting, but Cross had heard worse. She opened her mouth to respond, to argue, to fight as she always did. Then the hegemony delegate spoke. He was a creature who stood 3 meters tall, his body covered in black armor that clicked and rattled when he moved. His species believed in strength above all things, and they had never respected humans. To them, humans were soft, weak, and temporary. Perhaps, he said, his mandibles clicking with barely hidden contempt, the humans should return to their single little world and think about their place in the universe. Come back in 1,000 years when you have learned some patience. Laughter filled the chamber. It came from everywhere. The crystal beings sounded like wind chimes in a storm. The hegemony delegate rattled and clicked. The massive ape-like beings covered in fur rumbled deep in their chests. Even the smaller species, the ones who usually stayed quiet, joined in. 400 delegates from 97 species, all laughing at humanity. Cross stood in the center of it all. She did not move.
She did not speak.
She simply listened and remembered every voice, every sound, every face turned toward her in mockery. Behind her, David Torres's hands tightened into fists. The younger diplomats looked down at the floor, their cheeks burning. Torres's jaw was clenched so hard that Cross could see the muscles standing out in his neck. The laughter went on for a long time. No one tried to stop it. No one spoke in humanity's defense. After 90 years of membership, of service, of contribution to galactic society, this was what humans received. Mockery in the highest chamber of government. Something in Cross changed. She had been patient for 12 years. She had smiled at insults and ignored disrespect. She had told herself that things would get better, that humanity just needed time to prove itself. She had believed that fairness would eventually win. She did not believe that anymore. Cross turned her head slightly and met Torres's eyes. He saw something in her expression that he had never seen before.
Not anger, exactly.
Something colder. Something final. He gave her a small nod. Without a word, Cross turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence as the laughter died. Torres fell into step beside her. The younger diplomats followed, confused but loyal. Ambassador Cross, the High Arbiter's voice cracked through the air. You have not been dismissed. Return to your position immediately. Cross did not turn around. She did not slow down.
She did not speak.
This is a violation of Council protocol, the High Arbiter shouted. There will be consequences. The great doors opened before the human delegation. Beyond them lay the corridor that led to the outside world, to the ships that would take them home, to a future that no one in this chamber could imagine. Cross stopped at the threshold. For one moment, she stood framed in the doorway, a small human woman against the vast emptiness of the cosmos. Then she walked through, and the doors closed behind her. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted at each other, demanding explanations, assigning blame. Some called for immediate sanctions against Earth. Others argued for patience. A few sat quietly and worried. They did not understand what had just happened. They thought it was a tantrum, a childish display of hurt feelings. They thought the humans would calm down, apologize, and return to their proper place. They were wrong. That night, every human embassy on every world in the galaxy went dark. Communication channels closed. Trade negotiations stopped. Human workers quietly left their posts and boarded ships heading for Sol space. Human doctors finished their current patients and then walked away from hospitals that had relied on them for decades. The Galactic Council received one final transmission from Earth. It was broadcast on every frequency in every language, impossible to miss or ignore. The message was simple. Humanity has nothing more to say. Then the stars went quiet, and the galaxy learned what silence truly meant. The first week was easy. The Galactic Council told itself that humans were simply having a moment of emotion. They would return soon enough. They always did. Every young species went through such phases. It meant nothing. High Arbiter made a public statement calling for calm. The humans have expressed their displeasure, he said, his crystal body glowing with confidence. We will give them time to reflect on their behavior. When they are ready to apologize, we will be here to receive them. The hegemony delegate went further. Let them sulk in their little corner of space, he announced to cheering crowds. They need us far more than we need them. Their economy depends on our markets. In a month, they will come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. The galaxy believed these words because they wanted to believe them. Humans were newcomers. They were small. They were weak. How much could their absence possibly matter? They found out in the second week. It started with small things. A hospital on Velar Prime ran out of a common medication used to treat infections. The pharmacy ordered more from their usual supplier, a company on Mars. The order was refused. No explanation. No alternative. The hospital contacted other suppliers. There were no other suppliers. The medication required enzymes that could only be grown in human laboratories, using techniques that humans had developed and never shared. The galaxy had been using this medication for 60 years. No one had ever asked where it came from. By the end of the week, 17 hospitals across human space reported critical shortages. Patients began to die. On the hegemony homeworld, a different crisis emerged. Their mighty war fleet, the pride of their species, began having mechanical failures. Drive systems overheated. Navigation computers crashed. Weapons targeting went wrong in ways engineers could not explain. The problem was lubricant, a special synthetic oil that prevented fusion cores from degrading. It was used in every major warship in the fleet. It was manufactured by a single company on Mars. The hegemony contacted the company. The company did not respond. They sent ships to Mars to demand answers. The ships could not find Mars. The navigation beacons in human space had gone dark. Without those beacons, faster-than-light travel became a guessing game. Ships could jump blindly and hope to arrive somewhere useful. Most would not. No one had considered this. The beacon network was just there, like gravity, like light. Humans had built it over decades, spreading out from their single world to create a web of navigation points that connected the entire galactic arm. They had done it for free. They had maintained it for free. They had asked nothing in return except basic respect. Now the beacons were silent, and the galaxy discovered how much it had depended on human generosity. On Luna Station, Director Adira Sol watched the chaos unfold from her office. The reports scrolled across her screen in an endless stream of disasters. Factories shutting down, ships stranded, worlds losing contact with the broader galaxy, an entire civilization stumbling because one species had stopped helping. She felt no joy in this. She had built these dependencies over 20 years, quietly making human goods and services essential to galactic function. It had been insurance, a way to guarantee that humans could never be pushed out of galactic society. She had hoped it would never be needed, but it was needed now, and she would not waste it. Her assistant entered the office with a tablet full of new reports. He was young and sharp, with the kind of mind that saw patterns before they formed. The hegemony fleet is grounding itself, he said. They have figured out what is happening to their drives. They are saving their ships rather than risking catastrophic failure. Good, Sol said. We did not want deaths. We wanted attention. You have it. The Council has called 17 emergency sessions in the past 3 days. They cannot agree on anything. Some want to declare war on Earth. Others want to send diplomats. A few are suggesting that they simply wait us out. Let them argue. Time is on our side. On Nexus Prime, the arguments continued. The great chamber that had rung with laughter was now filled with shouting and fear. Species that had been allies for centuries turned on each other, blaming each other for the crisis. You drove them away, accused the overseer of the Merchant Coalition, pointing at the hegemony delegate. Your arrogance caused this. I spoke for the council, shot back the High Arbiter, his crystal form pulsing with angry light. We all agreed to deny their requests. We agreed because you told us to agree. You said they were insignificant. You said their proposal was a joke. It was a joke. They are newcomers. They should know their place. Their place, the delegate from the coalition said, his 4 eyes wide with fury, was in our hospitals, keeping our people alive. Their place was in our engines, keeping our ships flying. Their place was everywhere, doing everything, while we sat here and mocked them. The chamber fell silent. The words hung in the air like poison. What do you want us to do? Asked a small voice.
Apologize, someone said.
Beg if that is what it takes. But the council could not agree on that either. Some species refused to apologize to anyone, especially newcomers. Others worried that apologizing would make them look weak. A few argued that humanity was bluffing, that they could not sustain their isolation forever, that patience would win. While they argued, more ships failed. More patience died. More worlds went dark. The silence continued, and the galaxy began to understand that something fundamental had changed. Humanity was not coming back. Not unless something else came first. And that realization was only beginning to dawn. 2 months after the silence began, the colony on Ivor started to die. Ivor had been a hegemony triumph 300 years ago, a dead rock floating in space, too cold and too dark for any life. Hegemony engineers had worked for generations to transform it into a paradise. They built atmosphere processors to create air. They installed heating systems to warm the frozen ground. They planted forests and filled lakes with water brought from distant comets. 10 million hegemony citizens lived there now. They had children, built homes, started businesses. They looked up at the sky that their ancestors had created and felt proud. The atmosphere processors ran on software designed by human engineers. When the maintenance contracts expired and no humans came to renew them, the software began to fail. At first, the changes were small. The air became slightly thinner. The temperature dropped by a few degrees. The hegemony government sent their own technicians to fix the problem. Those technicians looked at the human design systems and could not understand them. It was not that the systems were too advanced. The technology was straightforward enough. But the way humans had built them was strange. The logic flowed in patterns that alien minds found hard to follow. Solutions appeared where the engineers expected problems. Problems appeared where they expected solutions. It is like they think differently than us, one technician reported. I can see what the system does, but I cannot see why it does it that way. The human mind works in ways we do not understand. The processors continued to fail. The air grew thinner every day. The governor ordered emergency evacuations, but there were not enough ships to move 10 million people quickly. Some would have to stay behind in the hope that help would come. The hope was getting smaller. On Titan Station, Director Adira Sol received the reports about Ivor. She read them carefully, her face showing nothing. How long do they have? She asked her deputy. Weeks, maybe. The processors are failing faster than anyone predicted. Their own engineers cannot stop it. Casualties? None yet. But if the atmosphere fails completely, everyone left on the planet will suffocate. Sol closed her eyes. This was not what she wanted. This was never what anyone wanted. Humanity had withdrawn from galactic society to demand respect, not to kill innocent people on a world that had done nothing wrong. But she could not simply give in. If humanity returned now without any real changes, everything they had suffered would be meaningless. The council would learn nothing. The laughter would return, and someday another insult would push humanity to withdraw again. The cycle would continue forever. There had to be a middle way. She contacted Ambassador Elena Cross that evening. The communication was heavily encrypted, routed through a dozen relay stations to prevent alien interception. The situation is becoming critical, Sol said. Cross's face on the screen was tired but determined. I know. I have been watching the reports. We cannot let them die. Not civilians. Not for politics. No, Cross agreed. We cannot. But we also cannot break the silence. If we do, they will see it as weakness. They will pressure us to return without giving us anything in return. I have a solution, Sol said. A humanitarian exception. We send help, but we do not speak. We do not negotiate. We do not acknowledge any communication from the Council or its members. We simply help and leave. Cross considered this. They might see it as a crack in our resolve. Or they might see it as proof that we are better than they are. That even when they hurt us, we still care about life. Let them chew on that while they argue about what to do next. The decision was made within hours. A fleet of human engineering ships left Sol space the next morning, their navigation computers programmed with coordinates that no alien ship could follow. They arrived at Ivor 3 days later. The governor watched the human vessels enter orbit with a mixture of hope and fear. He had spent weeks sending desperate messages to anyone who would listen, begging for help that never came. Now help was here, but he did not know what it meant. He opened a communication channel. Human vessels, this is the governor of Ivor. Thank you for responding to our distress calls. We are ready to receive your engineers and begin coordination of repairs. There was no response. Human vessels, please acknowledge. We need to know your intentions. Silence. The human ships moved into position above the failing atmosphere processors. Small craft descended to the surface carrying engineers and equipment. They landed, set up their workstations, and began repairs without a single word to anyone. Hegemony officials tried to approach them. The humans did not respond to questions. They did not accept offers of help. They did not look up from their work. It was as if the hegemony people were not there at all. What are they doing? The governor asked. They are fixing the processors, one advisor said. Their work is remarkable. They have already stabilized 2 of the primary units. At this rate, they will have the entire system running within a week. But why will they not speak to us? No one had an answer. The repairs took 5 days. The human engineers worked around the clock, sleeping in their ships and eating food they had brought from home. When they were finished, the atmosphere processors hummed with new life. The air became rich again. The temperature stabilized. Ivor would survive. The human ships lifted off, without ceremony. No farewell messages. No requests for payment or thanks. They simply rose into the sky and vanished into the darkness between stars. The governor stood on the balcony of his office and watched them go. He felt something strange in his chest, something he had not experienced in a long time. It took him a moment to recognize it.
Shame.
The humans had saved his world. 10 million lives preserved by people his own government had mocked and dismissed. They had come without being asked, helped without being thanked, left without being acknowledged. What did that say about them? What did it say about the hegemony? The governor did not have answers, but he knew that something had changed inside him, and he suspected he was not alone. Across the galaxy, the story of Ivor spread. Humans had shown mercy to their enemies. They had proven that their silence was not about hatred or revenge. It was about something deeper, something the galaxy was only beginning to understand. The silence continued, but its meaning had changed. The breaking point did not come from governments or councils. It came from ordinary people living ordinary lives, suddenly realizing that those lives had been built on human hands they had never bothered to notice. On Nexus Prime, a young scientist named Thessaly walked through the commercial district near her home. She had walked this path 1,000 times before, past the same shops and restaurants, never really seeing them. Today, everything looked different. Half the stores were closed. Their windows were dark, their doors locked, their signs faded. The owners had been human, and the humans were gone. A clothing shop where Thessaly had bought her first professional outfit. A bookstore that sold actual paper books, a human tradition that had become fashionable among young professionals. A repair shop that could fix anything from a broken communicator to an ancient family heirloom. All gone. All silent. All missed. Thessaly stopped in front of a small restaurant at the corner of the street. The sign above the door showed a simple bowl with steam rising from it. The restaurant had served something called tekbaki, a human dish made of soft rice cakes in spicy red sauce. Thessaly had discovered it during her university years and had eaten there at least twice a month ever since. The owner was a woman named Mina. She had always remembered Thessaly's order. Always asked about her studies, then her job, then her life. Always smiled when Thessaly walked through the door, as if seeing an old friend rather than just another customer. Thessaly had never asked where Mina came from, never asked about her family or what she did before opening the restaurant, never wondered what it felt like to be human in a galaxy that did not respect her people. Now the restaurant was closed. A small note on the door said, "Thank you for your patronage.
Goodbye."
Thessaly stood there for a long time looking at that note. The wind blew past her, cold and empty. She thought about all the times she could have said something kind, asked a real question, shown genuine interest in the woman who had fed her and smiled at her for years. She had never done any of those things. And now it was too late. This scene repeated itself across the galaxy. On world after world, in city after city, people woke up to the absence of humans and realized how much they had taken for granted. On a hegemony war world, a retired soldier named Kale sat in a bar that had once been owned by a human. The bar was closed now, run by a hegemony veteran who could not quite match the quality of the original. Kale drank his bitter alcohol and thought about the past. 30 years ago, during the war against the Xylar Empire, Kale had served alongside human marines. He had thought them weak at first. They were small compared to hegemony soldiers. Soft skin, slow reflexes. They could not survive in vacuum without suits. They could not see in darkness without lights. They seemed like prey animals pretending to be warriors. Then the Battle of Kale's Ridge happened. Kale's unit had been trapped behind enemy lines, surrounded by Xylar forces that outnumbered them 10-1. Ammunition was running low. Reinforcements were days away. Death seemed certain. A human sergeant named Marcus had saved them. He had led a squad of 12 humans through enemy territory, moving in ways the Xylar could not predict or understand. The humans attacked at night, using darkness as a weapon. They set traps, made false trails, fought not with strength but with cunning. The Xyler could not catch them. Marcus found Kale's unit on the third day. He guided them out of the trap, through gaps in the enemy lines that no one else had seen. When Xyler patrols came close, the humans drew them away, risking their own lives to protect their alien allies. 3 of the 12 humans died on that mission. Marcus himself took a wound that left him limping for the rest of his life. He never complained. When Kale tried to thank him, Marcus just shrugged and said, "We're on the same side. What else would I do?" Kale had promised himself that he would remember that debt, that he would honor the humans who had saved him, that he would stand up for them whenever he could. He had done none of those things. When others mocked humans, Kale stayed silent. When the council laughed at humanity's ambassador, he said nothing. When his own government dismissed human contributions to the war, he looked away. He had been a coward. And now, sitting in a bar that had lost its soul, he understood the price of his cowardice. Across the galaxy, similar realizations spread like fire through dry grass. Scientists remembered human colleagues who had shared discoveries freely. Doctors remembered human techniques that had saved countless lives. Artists remembered human music and stories that had opened new ways of seeing the universe. Messages began flooding the Galactic Council. Not demands or complaints, confessions. Ordinary citizens writing to their representatives, asking them to apologize, to bring the humans back, to make things right. High Arbiter read the messages in his private chamber. There were millions of them, more arriving every hour. Hegemony, coalition, merchant worlds, every species represented in the council, all saying the same thing. "We were wrong. We are sorry. Please help us fix this." His crystal body dimmed as he read. He had lived for 600 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had presided over the council through wars and plagues and disasters of every kind. He had never felt as small as he did now. "We laughed at them," he whispered to himself. "They gave us everything, and we laughed." His advisors stood nearby. "High Arbiter, are you well?" "No," the High Arbiter said. "I am sick with shame." "What will you do?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, his crystal form catching the light and scattering it into rainbows that danced across the walls. "I will do what I should have done from the beginning. I will listen." He walked out of his chamber and headed for the council floor. He had a message to send. And for the first time in his long life, he did not know what response he would receive. On the 100th day of silence, the Galactic Council did something that had never been done in 12,000 years of recorded history. They asked for forgiveness. The Great Chamber on Nexus Prime was filled to capacity. Every delegate from every member species was present. But they did not sit in their usual positions high above the floor. Instead, they stood in the center of the room, where petitioners traditionally made their cases, where the weak begged favors from the strong. Today, the strong were begging. High Arbiter stood at the front of the assembly. His crystal body had been polished until it gleamed, but he wore no symbols of his office. No crown, no robes, no signs of authority. He was just a being standing before the universe, trying to find the right words. Recording drones floated above, broadcasting to every world in the galaxy. Trillions of beings watched, waiting. "To the people of Earth and her colonies," he began, his voice clear but quiet. "To every human who has served in our hospitals, built our ships, taught our children, and asked only to be treated as equals."
He paused.
The chamber was absolutely silent. "We are sorry." The words hung in the air. Simple words, 2 short syllables that had never been spoken in this chamber before. The Galactic Council did not apologize. It commanded. It judged. It ruled. But not today. "For 90 years, you worked alongside us," the High Arbiter continued. "You shared your knowledge without asking payment. You healed our sick without demanding gratitude. You built the networks that connected our worlds without seeking control. You gave and gave and gave. And we took everything while offering nothing in return." One by one, other delegates stepped forward. The Hegemony Commander, who had mocked humanity so openly, now lowered his massive head in submission. The hegemony recognizes its failures, he said, his voice carrying none of its usual pride. We called humans weak when they showed us strength beyond our understanding. We laughed at their small bodies while they lifted us with their great hearts. We were fools. The coalition delegate spoke next. We forgot that every medical breakthrough that saved our children came from human laboratories. We forgot that every trade route that fed our worlds was maintained by human hands. We took credit for their work and gave them nothing but contempt. Species after species spoke. Each confession was specific. Each apology was real. This was not politics or performance. These were beings genuinely ashamed of what they had done. We do not ask you to return to the way things were, the High Arbiter said when the others had finished. The old way was wrong. We built a galaxy on human labor and repaid it with contempt. We cannot undo that harm. We can only promise to do better. His crystal form flickered with colors that meant deep emotion. Please give us one more chance. Let us prove that we can change. The broadcast ended. The council waited. 1 day passed. Then 2. Then 3. No human ships appeared. No messages were received. The silence continued, and the galaxy held its breath. Ambassador Elena Cross watched the council's message from her home in Seoul. She had seen the speech a dozen times, analyzing every word and gesture. She had consulted with leaders across Earth and the colonies. She had listened to ordinary humans who had been hurt by alien contempt for decades. The question was simple. Was this enough? Her deputy, David Torres, sat across from her in the garden. The cherry trees were blooming, filling the air with soft pink petals that drifted on the wind. The council has never apologized to anyone, he said. In 12,000 years. This is unprecedented. It is, Cross agreed. But apologies are easy. Actions are hard. So we wait for actions?
No.
We cannot wait forever. Our own people are suffering too. The isolation hurts us as much as it hurts them. Families are separated. Businesses are failing. Students cannot complete their studies at alien universities. Then what do we do? Cross looked at the cherry blossoms falling around them. Each petal was so light, so fragile, so easily destroyed. Yet together, they transformed the entire garden into something beautiful. We take a chance, she said. We believe that people can change, even when they have given us little reason to believe it. We trust that the universe can become better than it is. And if we are wrong, then we will withdraw again. And the next time, we will not come back. On the 4th day, a single human ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. It was a diplomatic vessel, small and unarmed, carrying Ambassador Cross and a staff of 20. The council detected the ship immediately. Messages flooded in from every species, every world, every citizen. The ship did not respond to any of them. It simply flew toward Nexus Prime in silence. Cross stood on the bridge, watching the planet grow larger in the viewport. Torres stood beside her, along with the same team that had walked out of the council chamber 100 days ago. Are you ready? Torres asked quietly. No, Cross admitted. But readiness is not required. Only willingness. The ship landed at the main spaceport. A crowd had gathered, thousands of beings from dozens of species, all waiting to see what would happen. They made no sound as the human delegation emerged. They simply watched, their various forms of eyes fixed on the small woman who led her people back into galactic society. High Arbiter met her at the edge of the landing pad. He was alone, without guards or advisors. Just one being facing another. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Two leaders who had stood on opposite sides of a wound that had torn the galaxy apart. Then the High Arbiter bowed. Not a slight nod of formal greeting, a deep bow of genuine respect, his crystal form nearly touching the ground. Welcome back, Ambassador, he said. We have missed you. Cross studied him carefully. She looked for signs of deception, for the old contempt hiding behind new words. She saw only weariness and hope, the emotions of someone who had faced their own failures and wanted desperately to do better. High Arbiter, she said, we have much to discuss. Yes, we do. They walked together toward the council building. Human and alien side by side. The crowd parted before them, still silent, still watching. Some wept. Some cheered. Some simply stood and felt the weight of history passing by. Nothing was solved. Nothing was finished. The work of rebuilding trust would take years, perhaps generations. There would be setbacks and disappointments. There would be moments when both sides wondered if they had made the right choice. But the silence was broken. The galaxy was talking again. And for the first time in a very long time, it was listening. The galaxy did not change overnight. Change, Ambassador Elena Cross knew, never came that way. It came in small moments, a hegemony officer thanking a human engineer, a coalition doctor learning a new technique from a human colleague, a child on Nexus Prime asking her parents why anyone had ever laughed at Earth. The memorial on Ivor was unveiled 1 year after the silence ended. 10 million names carved into stone, a reminder of those who would have died if humans had not come. But the humans who had saved them did not attend the ceremony. They sent no representatives. They made no speeches. They simply went back to work because that was what humans did. On the council floor, the seating arrangement changed. Humans were moved from the lower tier to a position of prominence, not because they demanded it, because the other species insisted. "You have earned this," the High Arbiter said when he informed Cross of a decision. "Earned," Cross replied. "We did not want to earn a seat. We wanted to be treated as equals from the beginning. You were right to want that. We were wrong to deny it. That is what we are trying to fix." It was not enough. Cross knew that. The council knew that. But it was a beginning. 5 years after the silence, human ships helped evacuate a hegemony colony threatened by a stellar flare. 10 years after, human and alien scientists jointly cured a plague that had haunted the outer systems for centuries. 20 years after, the first human was elected to the position of High Arbiter's deputy, a symbolic role, but a powerful one. None of this erased the past. The laughter still echoed in memory. The 100 days of silence still cast long shadows. But something new was being built alongside the old wounds. Ambassador Cross retired to her garden in Seoul. The cherry trees bloomed every spring, and she sat among the petals, reading reports from a galaxy that was slowly learning to listen. Her daughter, now grown, had become a diplomat herself, stationed on Nexus Prime, carrying forward the work her mother had begun. Was it worth it? A young journalist asked Cross on the 30th anniversary of the silence. She thought about the question. She thought about the hospitals that had run out of medicine, the ships that had drifted in the void, the 10 million people on Ivor who had nearly died. She thought about the laughter in the council chamber and the long months of silence that followed. "Ask me again in another 30 years, she said. "Ask me when the children born today have grown up in a galaxy where humans are not mocked, where respect is given freely, where no species has to withdraw to prove its worth. Then I will tell you if it was worth it." The journalist nodded and left. Cross sat in her garden, watching the cherry blossoms fall. She did not know if the galaxy would truly change. She did not know if the council's apology had been real enough, or if the reforms would last, or if someday another species would be laughed at and forced to make the same terrible choice. But she knew one thing. The humans who had saved Ivor, who had built the beacon network, who had healed the sick and taught the children, they had not done those things for gratitude or power. They had done them because that was who they were. The galaxy had taken them for granted. The galaxy had learned otherwise. And whether the lesson stuck or faded, the humans would still be there, still helping, still building, still refusing to become what their enemies had expected. That was not weakness, Cross thought. That was the quietest, most stubborn strength of all. She closed her eyes and let the petals fall around her. The silence was over. The talking had begun. And somewhere in the vast machinery of galactic civilization, the work continued, slowly, imperfectly, hopefully. It was enough. For now, it was enough.